Welcome aboard, everybody, to the Thursday evening edition of Freedomlink Radio. I'm Joe Joseph, joined by Mike Powers. And the theme for tonight, folks, is something very simple and something that I've reiterated to you time and time again. What was insane is now sane, and what was sane is now insane. And to highlight that, I'd like to welcome a very special guest returning to the program, and somebody who I admire very much and respect his opinion. He's the host of the American Independence Hour on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday evenings, and who really needs no introduction. Alfred Adask joins us here on the program. Welcome, Alfred.
Hi, Joe. Pleasure to be here.
Well, thank you very, very much. S-1867. One of the reasons why I asked you to come on and talk about this is because you've got a very good grounding, and you see things for what they are. This 1867. What do you think of that section 1031 and 1032?
Well, contrary to what a lot of people might suppose, I mean, I've read it, and it's cause for concern. But I don't see it to be cause for alarm. I've got it sitting here in front of me. It says, affirmation of authority of the Armed Forces of the United States to detain covered persons pursuant to the authorization for use of military force. Section A, in general, Congress affirms the authority of the President to use all necessary and appropriate force, yada, yada, to detain covered persons defined in subsection B. Subsection B. Talking about covered persons. This is the only thing it applies to. A covered person under this section, there are two sections here that deal with covered persons. First one is a person who planned, authorized, committed, or aided the terrorist attacks that occurred on September 11th, 2001, or harbored those responsible for those attacks. Mm-hmm. Well, that's not a large number of people. Right? Point one. And the only people who should be concerned about that would be George W. Bush, Dick Cheney, people in the CIA, National Security Agency, whatever part of the, whatever covert ops were used to actually knock those buildings down, because it's a virtual certainty the Muslims didn't have anything to do with knocking those buildings down.
Sure.
Or if they did, they only had it in the sense that they were, patsies or scapegoats for it. But the buildings fell from some kind of an inside implosion. I mean, it's virtually certain that's true. And from my perspective, this should be much concern to Dick Cheney and George W. Bush. But for the rest of us, item one, I wasn't involved in the September 11 attacks. I don't know who else was. I'm not concerned about that. Item two, a person who was part of or substantially supported Al-Qaeda, the Taliban, or associated forces that are engaged in hostilities against the United States or its coalition partners, including any person who has committed a belligerent act or has directly supported such hostilities in aid of such enemy forces. That pretty much seems to apply to what's going on in the Middle East and the actual hostilities. I know there's plenty of wiggle room here and the rest of that sort of thing, but it is possible that people here in this country have to some degree supported Al-Qaeda and the Taliban or whatever, but it's going to be a small number of people, all right? And it does, and the way this is set up, if you're not involved in the Taliban, Al-Qaeda, or associated forces that are engaged in hostilities against the United States, you are not one of the covered people under this section.
Well, let me ask you this, Alfred, just to clarify that a little bit. Associated forces or enemies against the United States, could that not be militia?
It could be a lot of things. There's a lot of things that it could be. I'm not saying this is a good thing.
Very open-ended.
I'm not saying this is an innocent thing, but I'm trying to get to, you got to pick your battles. You got to pick your fights. And you have to prioritize, and there are some things that are cause for great concern, and there are some things that are cause for lesser concern. Right now, I get the impression that this is being hyped. And this is turning into must-see TV, and people are saying, oh my God, the sky is falling, it's all coming to an end, the government's come to get us all. you go through this, you go further down into it, into 1033, Section 1033 deals with Guantanamo Bay. 1034, they're not going to provide any funds for Guantanamo Bay. Let me see if I can scroll down here and get...
Yeah, while you're scrolling down, this has to do with, first of all, folks, it's like I said before, it's the NDAA is a funding bill. It's how the government funds the military for fiscal year 2012. And what's odd about this is the shiesty way that they went about sticking this in a funding bill, like they always do, you know? And one of the things that I always ask, and I've asked my listeners to do, Alfred, is if that's the case, and this is what they want to do, then why don't they just introduce an amendment to the Constitution nullifying the 10th and the 4th Amendment? I mean,
well,
why wouldn't they be honest like that, you know?
Oh, come on. Well, you just answered your own question, didn't you? You're asking why aren't our politicians being honest? I mean, how do you get into office by being? You couldn't be a politician and be honest. Practically, that's not entirely.
You probably didn't hear the. You probably didn't hear the bada-boom ching afterwards.
yeah. We need a rim shot. We need some rim shots to do that. Here's the deal in any case, on Section 1034, prohibition on use of funds to construct or modify facilities in the United States to house detainees transferred from the United States Naval Station to Guantanamo Bay. They're dealing with you can't use, and they're not going to use any more money, at least not in fiscal 2012, to enhance facilities for people coming from Guantanamo Bay and presumably at Guantanamo Bay. And the point I'm getting to, Guantanamo Bay at the beginning held something like 775 detainees. And from what I was reading just before the program, as of May of this year, the number was down to 171, and I don't know what it is right now. But in part, what we're talking about with Section 1031 through Section 1036 or whatever, we're talking, at least in part, substantially about Guantanamo Bay.
Right.
Not many people. It's not like they're going to deport millions of Americans to Guantanamo Bay. They've only got facilities there to house maybe 1,000.
Right. Well, one of the other things too that I want to bring up is, you know, the government has had the power to detain Americans prior to the NDAA with the Military Commissions Act, the Patriot Act. I mean, all the infrastructure was put in place. I mean, look at Bradley Manning. You know, Bradley Manning's been held without trial or due process now for how long?
Well, the War Powers Act goes back pre 9/11. So I mean, yeah, exactly.
Right. Yeah. So I mean, they've had the power to do this for quite some time. My thing is why do they have to go about this now in this fashion? You know,
I think part of the reason I'm not a student of this per se. This isn't something that I've studied intensely, but particularly the sections 1031 through 1036, they repeatedly involve Guantanamo. They don't all expressly involve Guantanamo Bay, but they seem to. It's a reoccurring theme. That Guantanamo Bay has been an embarrassment for this country for a considerable period of time. And they've arrested these people. They've detained them. They don't know what to do with them. They still got 171 or thereabouts left over down there. What are they going to do with these people? I don't think they know. I think part of the motivation behind the Section 1031 and so on, I think it's trying to legalize how we handle these detainees, perhaps that we've already captured.
Yeah, it's interesting to say the least. Folks, stay tuned. We'll be right back in 3 minutes. You're listening. Welcome back, folks. The email address is thefreedomlink@centurylink.net. That's thefreedomlink@centurylink.net. I want to bring everybody's attention, before we get back into the conversation, I want to play a short clip of some of the secret torture provisions within S-1867, and I'm going to draw people's attention to the debate on the House floor. This is Senator Lindsey Graham talking about this, and after this, Joseph Lieberman. So stand by. Here it is.
Good friend from Connecticut. There's a proposal pending on the floor of the United States Senate that would say for the first time in American history that if a United States citizen decides to collaborate with the enemy, they cannot be held as an enemy combatant. I think you're very familiar with the history of the law in this area. The law of the land is that if you choose to help Al-Qaeda, you've committed an act of war against your fellow citizens, and you can be held as an enemy combatant for an indeterminate period of time so we can gather intelligence about what you may have done or about what you know about the enemy.
The great concern that we have now in terms of the security of the homeland is from so-called homegrown terrorists, radicalized Americans. So these people, in my opinion, have taken sides. They've joined the enemy. And to have this body at this time, as the threat of homegrown terrorism rises, say no, they can't be treated as enemy combatants, it is not only doesn't make sense and is totally unresponsive to the facts that I've just described. The fact is that it's also dangerous.
And so that is the audio that comes from them. Now, what's interesting, Al, is that it's very vague. The language is extremely vague. You know, and that's what really bothers me.
Well, they learn to speak in terms they learn to equivocate, they learn to be ambiguous, they learn to communicate in ways where you can understand what they probably meant, but you can't absolutely pin them down on it. I mean, that's just part of being a professional politician. But I agree that clip is extremely disturbing. They are talking about what they describe as homegrown terrorists. There have been reports the homegrown terrorists include people who support what? Ron Paul?
Yes.
They store food in their homes.
Yes, for more than 7 days, right.
Yeah. I mean, they got a bunch of crazy definitions. The clip you've just played is, from my perspective, far more dangerous than what I've seen in sections 1031 through 1036. This is where they're talking about the people, and they're talking about the homeland. I don't know which one of the congressmen was quoted as saying the homeland, referring to the homeland.
That was Senator Lieberman.
Do you have a definition of the homeland?
I do not handy. I mean,
neither do I, and I don't know of anyone who does.
Exactly.
Why are we fighting about the homeland? Why don't we just talk about the United States of America? And that's not what we're protecting here. They have come up with a new concept. They're not trying to protect the United States of America. They're not trying to protect the states of the Union. They said we're going to protect the homeland. Just what exactly is the homeland? I'll tell you what it makes me think of. Every time I hear them say homeland, I say homeland, homeland, über alles. You understand what I'm talking about?
Absolutely. Germany.
It was the old Nazi marching song. They were talking about Deutschland, Deutschland, über alles. This is the same damn thing. This is a fascist marching song right here when they're protecting the homeland. Piss on the homeland. I'm interested in protecting the United States of America, the perpetual union created by the Articles of Confederation, made more perfect by the Constitution of the United States. That's what I'm interested in protecting, and these people in Congress should be interested in protecting it also. I agree that there are enemies. There is an enemy relationship going on right now, but the people in Congress are the ones that are the enemies of the United States of America.
Exactly right, which is why I always say what was sane is insane and what is insane is sane, because everybody out there, all the common folk, if you will, have it backwards. It's all backwards. These people aren't protecting us. These people are against us.
I know. I mean, how do you explain the invasion of illegal aliens? It's been encouraged, openly encouraged by the government. I mean, Bush went out of his way to encourage them to come in here. Now it's slowed down because the economy is in a state of recession or worse. But regardless, government wants the invasion of illegal aliens. They won't protect our borders, but they are complaining that we have become the enemies of the government. Well, it's because the government has been captured by globalists in the New World Order, and they've become the enemies of the United States of America.
That's absolutely right. But there are a couple of things out here. First of all, there's one thing that troubles me, and this is from oathkeepers.org, and they put out an alert saying federal agents demand customer lists from Mormon food storage facilities. And this isn't the first time that I've heard something like this, but basically they want the customer lists for people who are buying storable foods, long-term storable foods. And why is that? Well, because, look what Stalin did in Russia to the Russian farmers during World War II that wouldn't comply with his edicts, I guess you could say. He took all their food and he starved them to death. Yeah. And that's what they're doing. They're creating a database of just exactly who's buying what and how, so that come time, they can go and raid your house, take your food, starve you out. And one other thing is, here's my rub with all this, Alfred. How are they going to pull this off? They don't have the people to do it. I can't see how they're going to do it. That's exactly right.
That's exactly right. You know, one of the things people have to be aware of, you know, it's you can paraphrase Franklin Delano Roosevelt, where he said there is nothing to fear but fear itself. The problem with a lot of these stories is that they inspire fear. Right. And I try not to sell fear myself. I try to get people to say, look, we can deal with this. And part of the reason I say we can deal with it is because only 0.3% of the population are police officers. They're outnumbered 300 to 1. And if you brought all the military back from all of the foreign posts where they are right now, bring them all back, it would only double the size of the police force. They'd still be outnumbered 150 to 1. And only a third of them are on duty at any particular time, or usually more or less. 3 shifts a day and so on. You got maybe a third of them on duty, which means they're outnumbered 450 to 1. And I don't care what kind of technology you have, you don't want to get into a fight where you're fighting 450 people who are armed with just rocks or bricks.
Exactly right.
They can't force this, but they can deceive people into cooperating and hiding and living in fear and not standing up to resist. We talked earlier before the program began about contacts you have, the story of, we were talking about contacts you have in the military.
Guard. Right.
Exactly, in the National Guard story. This is the kind of thing that is cause for celebration. Well, hope you're going to tell that story again right now.
I can. And folks, of course, this is unconfirmed, and we're working on confirming this. But according to Oath Keepers, there was and this is a National Guard unit. This person just got home from emergency deployment readiness exercise at his armory. Says during the exercise, 3 companies of infantry were polled with a questionnaire about a drill and its purpose. One of the questions were, will you as a member of the National Guard use lethal force against the American public if ordered to do so? When we come back, I will get into exactly what happened with this National Guard unit and what the consequences were for the person that stood up for what was right and for their oath. We'll be right back after these short messages. You're listening to Freedomlink Radio on the Orion Talk Radio Network. Don't go away. Welcome back. My guest tonight is Alfred Adask. His website is adask.wordpress.com. Fantastic site, full of knowledge and let me tell you, life experience. And I'm so happy to have you here, Alfred. And to finish the conversation, or the what we were talking about, so the National Guard, this National Guard unit is participating in an emergency deployment readiness exercise, and they're given a questionnaire about the drill and its purpose. One of the questions was, will you as a member of the National Guard use lethal force against the American public if ordered to do so? One of the men stepped forward and refused to take the poll and explained that it was a moral judgment on his part and that he could not do so. He then placed his weapon on the ground and fell behind the formation. And this person said it was like a waterfall. Every member laid their weapons on the deck and fell in beside the one lone specialist. This included all NCOs, staff NCOs, and senior NCOs. The only people left in front of the original formation were 3 captains, 2 lieutenants, and the battalion commander, who was so upset that he started having chest pains from yelling and screaming about court-martials and the disbandment of the unit into other units. This guy, Devin, is a master sergeant, and he went with his troops and told them he could not be prouder of any one of them. He was floating while he was telling me this, and he says, maybe we have more than just hope on our side.
Darn right.
And I truly believe that, Alfred. I really do.
Absolutely. And I mean, it's an inspiring story, and it tells you the important lesson. It tells you what one man can do.
Right.
That whole story depends on one man out of a formation of who knows, maybe a couple hundred. I don't know how many that were there altogether. But if one man had not initially stood up and said, hell no, I'm not going to cooperate with this crap, the rest of them might have just stood in line. But as soon as they see that first one man do that, they did the right thing also. It is a lesson for everyone out here how important it is that you stand up. Even at moments when you think you're all alone, you may be surprised to discover all the people standing around you. They might be exactly agreeing with you, but afraid to say so in public. One man stands up, other people will follow.
Right. Now, an update, just so everybody knows, the person that put their weapon down first and said they will not participate is now in the county clink awaiting charges, UCMJ charges. What charges they could be, I don't know. They'll come up with something, disobeying.
They'll come up with something, but my guess is this is going to be dropped.
Now, Mike,
I mean, this is so politically embarrassing for the government right now. This has been just one stupid idiot went out and he said, let's do a study and see if you guys will shoot Americans. And it blew up in their face. And now what are they going to do? Try to make this good? I mean, this just is a no-win situation for the government. And the guy in the jail only makes it worse for him.
That's right. Absolutely right. Now, Mike, you have a source also within the armed forces, don't you? Oh, he's
No, man. I'm sorry. I had a phone call I wound up having to take. I'm getting updates from Texas. Similar stories pouring in from multiple parts of the region. For reasons of OPSEC and PERSEC, I am not at liberty to discuss the individual's name. All I will say is that they are an immediate family member that is currently serving with a very prestigious U.S. Army unit. I will say only that they are one Special Forces group, has openly said to all of their leadership that they will not be participating in any anti-American acts. They will not participate in assaults on American people. In fact, they will honor their commitments, and they will be fighting for the American people. Now, this is it's not coming lightly. It's not coming from, this is coming from team daddies. We're not talking about, a little specialist here and a little private there. We're talking about, senior enlisted individuals. Just got an update from a friend of mine in Texas who's down there at a military installation who said the same thing, that they've been talking to all the people in their units. They've all been saying the same thing, that they will not participate, which only goes back to solidify my previous opinion when I said that they're not going to be able to make a play like this using American troops. They're going to have to get outside help.
I understand.
Which is cool,
and
because,
even then,
I'm sorry, Alfred, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Well, it's going to be difficult to bring in outside help. There are a lot of people. I won't say it's impossible, and I won't say they're not planning to do it. But suppose a lot of people say, oh, my God, they're going to bring all the red Chinese over here.
That's okay.
Well, it's possible. It's conceivable on one level. But the logistics of moving enough people onto this continent to actually take over this country. I mean, it took George Bush most of a year to get lined up to go after Iraq, and Iraq is only about the size and population of Texas.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Talk about taking over a whole country. Plus, if you screw up, we still have a whole bunch of Poseidon submarines floating around, and the next thing you know, Peking may cease to exist.
Right.
This is not a good country for somebody. Oh, yeah, sure, we'll invade the United States of America. Well, you better pull it off, Bubba, because if you don't, you're going to be toast.
Behind every blade of grass.
Yep.
Right. Well, to your point, you're right. This is a lot of this stuff is put out to encourage fear, to get that fearful emotion going within you. And that's another thing I've been harping about too lately, Alfred, is that there is no – when you take that element of fear away, then, you know, they have no power. You've taken that power away from them. The problem with the United States of America is that people still have way too much to lose, which is why they fear all this stuff, because they won't go out and stick their necks out on the line, because you've got a father that says, what good am I going to be to my family if I'm sitting in a jail cell, vice being a provider for my wife and kids? So it's very difficult, because at this point in time, we still have too much to lose, whereas if you take somebody in Egypt, what do they have to lose? Oh, let's see, I get to go home to a mud hut and figure out what the heck I'm going to eat for dinner.
That's right.
You know, and I
agree, but you know, there's a flip side on that.
Okay.
You can look at the American military, you can look at the American police, who, in theory, the government is going to depend on to impose something like a police state. They also have a lot to lose. They also have wives and kids, and they want to go home and eat dinner.
Right.
And there's got to be a lot of cops who say, you know, I ain't going to get out and get in a fight with 450 people. You think I'm crazy? I want to go home and see my wife and kids too.
Right.
So this fear, you know, it's a peculiar thing. It cuts in both directions. We talked during the last break about one of the problems is that there's a constellation of events and reports that are taking place right now, and we see them more and more rapidly. I mean, it's right now you see things like this Senate Bill 1867, and there's something going on about opening up concentration camps or funding FEMA camps and the rest of that, and they're coming at us. The police state is becoming more overt. We can see it every day. You see it with greater clarity. It's impossible to miss that it's there. Some people think that that's evidence of their growing power. I think it's evidence of their growing desperation.
Paranoia.
If the system is running properly, it will shear the sheep, and the sheep will never even know they're being sheared. When the government has to come up and forcefully hold the sheep down and say, we're going to get you all, we're going to get all you sheep, we're going to shear you in their side, and you better all be afraid, it's evidence that the system is breaking down. They're losing power. If they really have to break out the billy clubs and the rest of that, it's not evidence they have power. It's evidence they are losing power, in my opinion.
Right. So would you say then,
we're in difficult times, dangerous times, scary times, but we are the 800-pound gorilla if we care to stand up on our hind legs.
And I truly believe, from a standpoint of the powers that be, because they're global. It's a very small elitist group that actually control all of this oppression, all of this tyranny. They pull the strings of the puppets in Washington. But I truly believe that it's the United States people, the people of the United States of America, that are the make or break here for the world. Either we stand up and we take this beast down, or all is lost. I don't see the world doing this without the United States, without the people of the United States getting on board. That's how I truly feel. When we come back, it'll be the last segment before Alfred's got to go and do his own show. So we'll get him in. Any last questions, please put them in the chat room. And we'll be back after these messages. 3 minutes, not long to wait. So stay tuned. We'll be right back. Welcome back, folks. Final segment of hour number one. Alfred Adask, my guest for this segment and for the first hour of the show. And one thing that I always try to do is I always try to look for the where this all comes from, the very root cause of all of this. And when you really boil it down, Alfred, it's the battle of good versus evil. I mean,
this is spiritual warfare
at its core. Absolutely.
Yes. This is spiritual warfare. That's what we're doing right now, and I can give you something here out of the Bible. It says, this is Revelation, 21:7 and 8. It says, he who overcomes shall inherit all things. I will be his God, and he shall be my son. But the cowardly, unbelieving, abominable, murderers, sexually immoral, sorcerers, idolaters, and all liars shall have their part in the lake which burns with fire and brimstone, which is the second death. They're giving you a laundry list of who is destined for damnation. And you're not surprised to see murderers and liars and so on. But top of the list is the cowardly. In some versions, it says the fearful. What they're saying is those who are subject to fear, they're first on the list headed for hell. And the reason is that your faith is inversely proportional to your fear. Insofar as you're dominated by fear, you are weak in your faith. Insofar as your faith increases, your fear diminishes. Point, if you succumb to the PR that the government would have you to believe that the almighty government is coming to get you, and you better be afraid, and you better be, from my perspective, this is spiritual warfare, and they're just trying to tempt you with fear, and I'm saying don't do it. Now is the time. Get ready. Stand up. Get involved. Things are going our way.
I totally agree. Mike, anything to add?
Yeah, I think he's got it in a nutshell. I mean, it's very, very plainly said. The only thing I could add to that is, like I said in the chat room, is invest in an AK. I think you're going to be seeing a lot of them before too much longer.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, you need to back up with that, that's for sure. But you also need to understand that spiritual warfare. And I came to this, late in life understanding. But the great thing about this country flows from the Declaration of Independence, which is a profoundly spiritual document. Right. And it says we hold these truths to be self-evident. All men are created equal and endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights. All right? No other government has ever said that. All other governments presume that only one man, if it's a monarchy, is the king. He's the sovereign. The people are all subjects because they don't get their rights from God. Our country started out and said, no, everybody gets their rights from God. And the third sentence of the Declaration says that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men. They're telling us the primary purpose of government, as envisioned by the founders, was to secure your God-given unalienable rights. This is why this has been the last best hope of man. This was the foundation for land of the free. It was the idea that we all got our rights from God. It is the theological foundation for our country. It's found right there in our Declaration of Independence. It is still part of the organic law of the United States of America to this day. And all I'm trying to say is, look, this is spiritual warfare. The government doesn't want you to know about your God-given unalienable rights. They don't want to secure them, because if they do, if they recognize it, they are your public servants rather than your master.
Right, and that's why they've
taken the concept of sovereignty. But it all traces back to the good Lord. This is
right, and that's why they've tried so hard and have been so consistent with their eradicating God from everything in your life, whether it be. And look at what it's been replaced with. Look what it's been replaced with: sexual immorality. I mean, we're practically Sodom and Gomorrah. For all sense and purposes. I mean, it's the
truth of the matter is, you see movies about Sodom and Gomorrah, and they are presented as some freaky place where everybody is weird and dangerous and the rest of that. I'll tell you what Sodom and Gomorrah, in fact, looked like. It was the happiest kingdom of them all. It looked like Las Vegas or someplace or something similar. That's what Sodom and Gomorrah looked like. Come on down, baby. You get free drinks when you're playing at the roulette table and the rest of that sort of thing. We've got a bunch of scantily clad women running around. It would look like a fun time, Sodom and Gomorrah. And you can't be deceived into thinking that everything evil is necessarily dark and unattractive. If you believe that, you won't see what's evil when it actually shows up. You may miss it.
No, you're absolutely right. Absolutely right. Well, Alfred, it was great having you on the show tonight. I don't want to keep you because I know you got to get to yours. Can you give my listeners where they can find you, both listen to you on the radio and your website? I'm
on American Voice Radio on the internet and also on shortwave. American Voice Radio. You can find AmericanVoiceRadio.com. We'll go on in about, I'll be on in right about 10 minutes. I'll start up on the next program. You can find my blog, Adask, ADASK, .wordpress.com. All right, you can find anything I have to say out there. If you're interested, stop in.
It's great. It was great having you on the show tonight, Alfred. And I
always
really
appreciate the opportunity, Joe.
Oh, man, it's fantastic. And hope to have you back soon.
Give me a call.
You got it.
Thank you, Joe. Good night, Mike.
No problem.
Take care, bud.
Bye-bye.
Alfred Adask, folks, one of probably the most brilliant men that I have ever talked to, and definitely has it plugged in. And Mike, he's right. He's right. When it all comes down to it, it's fear-mongering at its core. It's something that we need to be aware of and we need to know, but it's something that we lose sight of all the time, or maybe not even think of, is the fact that they are desperate and they are losing control because the farce, it's just too much for them to maintain. The sham, right. How can they possibly pull it off?
Well, the rock bottom answer to that, Joe, is they simply can't. Number one, they don't have the logistics. I mean, right now, this administration has not been able to back a single funded piece of legislation yet. They haven't been able to do it because they can't get party lines crossed. When you looked at something like and this is something I kind of thought when we had this conversation when this thing first came out, right. Does this have something to do predominantly more with Guantanamo than it does anything else? But the one point that I noticed we overlooked in the first hour of the broadcast was that in subsections of this National Defense Authorization Act, it declares the United States, the nation, that they're
a battleground, a battlefield.
A battlefield, which means that anybody under the internationally agreed upon laws of land warfare inside that area is subject to that act.
Exactly right. And the other thing that people need to understand, too, is when that happens, the laws of war apply. And that's the reason why Obama wants this bill vetoed, because he doesn't want the Geneva Conventions to apply to these detainees. That could be you or me or anybody else, because
that's right.
The Geneva Conventions calls out quite clearly how you treat a prisoner. And one thing, more than anything, sticks out with the Geneva Conventions, and that's the illegality of torture. You're not supposed to torture
if we're going to do it, in for a penny, in for a pound. If we're going to do it, we might as well go ahead and do it right. And it's funny to me that all these things are coming on the heels of Gun Runner, on the heels of the waterboarding thing, on the heels of, every time you turn around, yet you've got Corzine, who can't explain where $2.8 billion went. I just don't know where the money went.
Oh, man, we'll get into that next hour. That is such – between Corzine and Eric Holder, it's enough to make me freaking puke, man.
Did you hear I have no intention of resigning. I have no intention whatsoever of resigning as Attorney General.
I have every intention of hanging that son of a bee, if you ask me. I'll tell you what. Give me a rope and send him to me, and I will make sure that everything goes down the way it's supposed to go down. Because justice – needs to be served here, folks. We need to hold these people accountable. Remember, they are not slave masters. We are the boss. And when these people and our system of government, the judicial branch, the legislative branch, they break down to the point where justice, where the rule of law does not apply, then there's a problem, and we need to hold them accountable. Much so to the case of the Constitution. People complain that the Constitution doesn't apply, but we give it teeth. And without the people giving it teeth, it is nothing more than toilet paper for the elitists to wipe their butts with.
Which is exactly how they would have you envision it. Now, my argument is that under the provisions of this new National Defense Authorization Act, anyone found guilty of providing aid, intelligence, or otherwise quartering, harboring, or abetting threats to national security are considered combatants and can be detained. So as far as I'm concerned, does that mean that the American people have the right to walk up to Capitol Hill and arrest every single person that voted for it?
Well, the problem that you're going to have with that, Mike, is the fact that right now you just don't have enough public outrage. But it's like Alfred said in the interview tonight, that it only takes one person, really. It's that lightning in a bottle that somebody catches that all of a sudden explodes in their face, and the next thing you know, they've got quite a problem on their hands when all of a sudden the peasants are grabbing their pitchforks and torches.
That's right.
And I'm telling you, we're getting close, and they're getting desperate. Hour number 1 is done, folks. Hour number 2 coming up after these messages. You're listening to Freedomlink Radio on the Orion Talk Radio Network. Stay tuned. Lots more to talk about.
Sounds first in the hearts of freedom's vanguard.
Welcome to hour number 2 of Freedomlink Radio. This is Joe Joseph along with Mike Powers. What a fantastic interview I had with Alfred Adask in hour number 1, and I will post that on my YouTube channel. That's the Freedomlink Radio. So if you go to the Freedomlink Radio, that's where I archive all the shows, and I will have this up for you tomorrow evening if you want to listen to it again or pass it along to anybody else. But, you know, Alfred did make a great point, Mike, in that this is all fear tactics to make you fear, to make you sit in the shadows, to make you wait, to make you do nothing. And that's, that's really what it's all about, dude.
Let's expand on that real quick, okay? Seriously.
Sure.
Let's expand on that for just a minute. What is the very literal definition of terrorism? If you were forced to define the word terrorism, how would you do it?
Do you have, like, the Webster's version available?
I can kind of somewhat knee-jerk it real quick.
Go ahead.
The generalized definition of the word terrorism is the threat of or the actual use of physical force or violence against civilian populace to influence political decisions. Okay, and that's just basically the nutshell of it. So if you really want to get down to the brass tacks of what we're facing in this country right now, it is the literal definition of terrorism at its finest. They are using fear and fear-mongering tactics against the populace of this country, who continues to pay taxes to a government. It's a tax-free loan. You know, it's an interest-free loan, rather. Who continues to give their government interest-free loans to use the weapon of fear against you. Oh, my goodness, you can't go outside because everything and everyone's a terrorist. You can't get on a plane because a terrorist is going to bomb it. You can't get on a bus because a terrorist is going to bomb it. You know, I watched a really interesting movie last night called The Siege that was from 1999. It starred Bruce Willis and, Denzel Washington. Watched it last night. It was a fantastic movie. And basically it was now important caveat here is 1999, pre-1911. Not 1911. Got guns on the brain. Pre-9/11. General premise was that they took an Arab leader, and they're kind of very bin Laden-ish, and wound up turning New York City into a detention camp, if you will. The whole of Manhattan. And I kind of sat back and I just sitting there thinking silently, I'm like, my God, this is foreshadowing. This is Hollywood has always played its role in this. And that's how you continue scaring people. You continue scaring them by use of the media. Oh, we had another shooting at Virginia Tech today. Another bizarre shooting where some weirdo comes out of the woodworks and shoots an officer engaging in a traffic stop, murders him in cold blood. Then he runs away and shoots himself. You know, I got to sit back and I got to start calling into question the validity of all these things. Now, it's absolutely terrible that something like that actually took place. I'm sorry to hear it. I'm sorry that officer fell in the line of duty. But I also just kind of have to sit back and ask myself, how many of these things are deliberately organized with the express and explicit intention of galvanizing law enforcement against the public? They want police officers to dislike people, especially ones that own firearms.
Absolutely.
They want the police to not trust law enforcement. They want the civilian populace of this nation to be terrified of their own military.
Right.
And they're wanting the military to view gun owners like you and I and everybody else out here. I'm assuming all of our listeners are gun owners. They want the military to look at us as potential terror threats because it's the same overused, overplayed, over-exasperated bullshit hand that they've been using for the last 15 years. Ooh, terrorism, terrorism, terrorism. You know what? All I got to say is F terrorism. You know what the solution to terrorism is? A loaded rifle.
That's right. It's a control tactic, Mike. I mean, and I want to preface this too. Even at the height of Nazi power during World War II did Adolf Hitler and his brown shirts and the SS never at any point did they go and grope your wife when you were traveling? They may have checked your papers. Hey, your papers, my friend. Where are you going? Papers. Yeah, but did they grab her freaking boobs and her freaking butt and her crotch?
That is sexual intimidation. That is absolutely
man, exactly right. And what man in their right mind is going to go and let them do that to your freaking spouse? I'd freaking, or your child, even worse.
Yeah. Well, grannies, I mean, there was an elderly lady the other day. I'm like, you're looking at this woman, dude. Somebody put their freaking hands on my grandmother like that, and I'll tell you what, son, the chains of hell would be unleashed. I'm sitting there thinking,
and well, before you get there, I want to go here too, because I think this all has to do, the terrorism, the fear, all of that is controlled to keep people suppressed. Why? Because they don't have the manpower to be able to take care of a full-scale revolt of the peasantry. They can't handle it. So they have to do this in order to keep people suppressed and controlled.
Exactly. Well, and that's the thing. And that just goes to show you exactly how powerful of a weapon fear really is. And they're taking playbook pages right out of 1930s Germany. They're doing every single thing. I mean, if you want to know what the ultimate conclusion of this is going to be, just read World War II history, the rise and fall of the Third Reich. It's right there in front of your face. They're taking pages right out of Hitler's playbook. You know, and the other thing I just wanted to, this is something going on in the chat room right here. I just want to make one additional point. We were talking about the TSA things. If you really look at it, you look at the job itself, who they pitch it to. You know, they're not going to pitch it to an educated person with a college degree or any of that kind of stuff, because somebody would look at that and realize the sheer perverse nature of it. Who wants to stand in a sweaty, stinky airport all afternoon? They're going to pander it to these basically minimum wage, low wage jobs. They're going to pander it to somebody who already has some kind of inappropriate sexual nature or perverse tendencies to begin with. Ooh, I get to feel up all these hot chicks. I can run my thumb up her butt crack when she's coming through the security checkpoint. You know, I'm sitting there telling you what, man, one of those little sleaze bags ever put their hands on anybody I care about. And there's, dude, I'm just pissed sitting here thinking about it. You know, I was reading a story the other day about this little old gal that wound up getting felt up in one of the areas, and now she's suing the shit out of him. And I tell you what, 10 points to her. I hope she wins, and I hope she makes millions doing it. But, you know, and then that's the thing, man, is when you got it dead on the money. It's the use of fear. And I sit back and I think to myself, this is one of two things. This is either exactly as it really is being implied to us, or it is the most intricately planned, most expertly executed psychological type operation anyone has ever thought about. Because they have got people down to the point where they're afraid of their next door neighbors, for Christ's sakes. People don't even talk to their neighbors anymore.
That's right. Unless you go to rural areas like where I live, where you live, where that type of atmosphere doesn't exist, because country bumpkins still live the old-fashioned way. They still do things the old-fashioned way. There's no – heck, we don't even have a real police force out here, which kicks butt. I mean, 9 times out of 10 you're on your own, because to get a deputy out here – it takes at least 2 hours. Heck, I had they handle everything. But one thing that I want to say is, think about it. They keep people suppressed and in fear, and they keep people suppressed by fear. And all of this is so they can loot the country, they can loot the people, they can get away with murder. Look at this Eric Holder thing. Where's the outrage? Why aren't people standing up? Why? Because they fear that they'll be labeled a terrorist. They fear of some sort of circumstance or action against them for speaking out, for going to Capitol Hill, for freaking putting cuffs on him or making a citizen's arrest, because he is a criminal. He is a treasonous dog. Look at what he did. Look at what he did. He gave arms. He gave arms with knowingly illegal arms to the enemy. And that's what they are. These drug pushers, come on. And if that's not a threat to our sovereignty, I don't know what is. I mean, this is just insane. When we come back, folks, we'll continue this conversation. Still too much to talk about. So stay tuned, sit tight. We'll be right back. You're listening to Freedomlink Radio on the Orion Talk Radio Network. Each and every one of you that take the time to email me with your questions, concerns, your comments, and most of all, your compliments. It's been fantastic, the support that I've gotten from everybody that's taken the time to email. So please keep them coming. The email address is thefreedomlink@centurylink.net. That's thefreedomlink@centurylink.net. So, Mike, what else is on the docket for this evening?
Besides yelling at a muted microphone, not an awful lot. I do that all too frequently, man. No, I wasn't kidding when I said a few minutes ago, I was like advising folks out there to really consider investing in an AK, because I really get to the point where I think you're going to be seeing a lot of them very soon. And the major reason that I keep going back to that is because, we were talking about the logistics of this whole situation, and people are scared of the cops and they're scared of the military. And I'm here, I've said it a million times before, I'll say it again. I am absolutely convinced that if and when this stuff starts, you're going to see, number one, you're going to see a massive exodus of military troops. They are not going to cooperate with this. They are not that brainwashed. They are not that subjective to their corporate masters or any of that kind of crap. Most of them are free-thinking, pretty smart dudes, and they all went in the military for the same reason all the rest of us did, because we had a desire to serve our country. And bottom line, when it comes down to it, I've spoken to a lot of people, man. I've been away from the show for a week, a little bit now. I've been really, really busy getting stuff done. I've got a lot of really cool things coming up for all of our listeners out there. I've been talking to a lot of people, trying to set up some interviews on some very heated topics, and this is one of them. The one thing that I can tell you is the overwhelming response that I've been getting from all the people that I've been talking to is not no, but F no. We will not participate in attacking American people. That's not what we signed up for. I've been talking to some of my local National Guard guys here and have asked them point blank. I went into a recruiting office 4 days ago and was speaking with somebody there, representative of the U.S. Army. I specifically walked right up and asked him, what is the MOS for internment specialist? And I'd have to go back and consult my notes, but there actually is a job within the U.S. Army, what they call MOS, or military occupational specialty, that is internment specialist.
Right. They've been posting that for quite a while, yeah. Yeah,
exactly. And I just wanted to see what his reaction was going to be. And he looked me dead in the face and he says, nothing that you'll ever find me doing. And I went, oh, fair enough.
Well, here's something to Alex Jones put out about the manning the FEMA camps and everything else. He broke that story. And so I did a little research into, what he was saying, and there is a lot of credibility to it. My thing, again, is they're trying to keep people as divided as possible and as in fear as possible to prevent a full-scale revolt. Now, they can handle pockets of resistance, but they can't handle a full-scale revolt. And they know this. So anyway, folks, this is from the FBO, and I'm going to put this link in the chat room for everybody to see and to explore. And what I want you to do is take a look not only at this page, but there's a PDF file that has a statement of work on it that outlines what this is for. Now, for anybody that doesn't understand this, let me explain this to you. This here is a pre-solicitation notice that the government puts out for contractors to bid on. So basically what they do is they say, here's a statement of work. This is what we need, and this is what we want you to bid on based on that contractor's bid on that particular solicitation. And then once all the bids are in, then they award a contract. What's disturbing about this is KBR won the contract, which happens to be a subsidiary of Halliburton, who we know to be shysters and corrupt. And one thing that we need to understand is what it is they're bidding on. So go ahead and take a look at that PDF file that's there, and let me just bring a couple of things to your attention. A lot of this has to do with continuity of government. Well, continuity of government, there's a lot to that. I mean, we talk of PDD 51 when you talk about continuity of government, Presidential Directive PDD 51, which has to do with martial law. Well, here it is. This is the solicitation for what Alex Jones is talking about. Now, the documents that he got were internal to KBR. These are the actual government documents showing the solicitation of this capability that they want to contract out. Because they obviously don't have the amount of people, the manpower, to man these facilities in all 50 states or wherever the heck they are. I mean, they're all over the place. They're peppered all over the place. And let me preface this also. Okay? They don't build these camps. They don't build underground military bases. They don't build seed vaults in the side of a mountain in the Arctic Circle for no apparent reason. There has to be a method to the madness. And what is that method? That is the question. What is it that they see that we don't? Because already tonight, I flipped things on their head, you know? You have a lot of people out there that are fear-mongering and saying, you know, they're going to come in there, they're going to take your stuff, they're going to do all this. They're fear-mongering, and they very may will. They may do that. But if people stand up, if the American people stand up, and in order for that to happen, it's going to take each and every one of you to stick your necks out and say, look, this is not right. And you have to pass the word, and you have to be persistent about it. Just because somebody may blow you off the first time, 10 times over, don't quit. Because eventually it'll sink in. There's going to be something you say at some point in time that's going to snap a light switch on in their head and say, you know what? Wait a minute. You're right. And it's a different stimulus for each person. The same stimulus is not going to work for each person. It's going to take something different each time, Mike.
You know what, man? I'm going to go ahead and augment that by telling you that I had a recent conversation with a family member who has, up until this point, been extremely reliant to hear anything of this up until this 1867 thing. And then I got a phone call. And they were like, you know what? This entire time I've sat back and I've called you a nutbag. I've called you a conspiracy theorist. I've called you this. I've called you that, so on and so forth. And she sits there and says, you know, I'm sitting here literally trembling in fear. You've been right the entire time, and we've wasted so much time. What do we do now? What do we do now? What do we do? And, you know, it's spooky, man. It's really spooky to sit back and hear how many people you care about. When you hear real fear in the voice of somebody that, you know, one of your family members or something, if that doesn't wake you up and get you motivated, by God, nothing will.
Absolutely right. And like I said, the stimuli for each person is going to be different. And it just so happens to be like Grand Jury Answer just put in a great comment, you know, saying it works pretty well to say how many planes. You're absolutely right. You could use 9/11 as an example and say 3 buildings, 2 planes. Do the math. Right. You can also say for a example is how in the heck do 3 buildings fall through the path of most resistance in their own footprint and at free fall speed? It's physically impossible. You find a scientist out there that'll give you a logical explanation for that is in line with the laws of physics, and send them to me. I got a rope for them. We'll be right back, folks. You're listening to Freedomlink Radio on the Orion Talk Radio Network. Folks, I think it's time that, and you know this is a rare occurrence for me, so I'm going to open up the phones, 888-320-6151, 888-320-6151. Let's go to Annie in Florida. You're live on the air.
Hey there, Mike. I just want to wish you a happy birthday. Joe, sorry. I'm sorry. I just emailed Mike. That's why. Sorry. I want to wish you a happy birthday, Joe.
No, I appreciate that. Happy birthday to you too, Annie. It's your birthday too, isn't it?
It see what happens when you get to be my age. I can bring that from on being senile.
Well, I appreciate the birthday wish.
Oh, Joe, you know I love you, Joe, and I just couldn't, go through wishing you a happy birthday. Nobody couldn't wish you a birthday when I said it was mine the last time in the chat room, so I was surprised.
Oh, no sweat. Well, Annie, we got a lot of stuff we got to get to, so is there anything you want to add about tonight's topic?
Okay, God bless you.
Hey, no problem. Take care and have a great night. Okay, folks. Anybody wants to call, the number is 888-320-6151, 888-320-6151. Hey, now, Mike, again, I was saying that this Eric Holder thing is a perfect example of how people or why people should be pissed. The corruption. Exactly. And really all of this fear-mongering is based on, or it allows these people to facilitate fraud against the American people.
Well, it's so much worse than that, man. I mean, that is just the bare bones bottom line initial first charge that they should be brought up against in courts. What's worse is it's treason. It's sedition. It's the usurpation of the United States' power and authority. When you sit back and you watch the arrogance, the unmeasured, unbridled, unrestricted arrogance that these sons of bitches have when they lift up their chin at you and tell you, I have absolutely no intention of stepping down. Stuff like that. And you sit back and it's just, what president in history has ever had balls that big? I mean, it's got to be difficult to walk. It's reminiscent of an episode of South Park, dude. I mean, seriously, I'm sitting there thinking of an episode of South Park where the kid's father did something to his nuts and it made him swell up to like enormous size. And he's like, "You remember the old bouncy ball things we had when we were kids? Had the handle on top of it and you sat on it." And like, I don't know, dude. I sit back and I think to myself, it's insane. It's worse than insane.
I have no intention of stepping down. Who the hell does this guy think he is? I mean, really, he is a public servant. People need to understand and educate. Go down to your police department or your sheriff's office and go talk to them. I plan on doing it at my sheriff's office again, even though, I know I got my work cut out for me, but I'm going to go and I'm going to try. Because what I'm coming to find out is that there are a lot more law enforcement officers and active duty military, hell, even National Guard, just like I prefaced in tonight with that Oath Keeper alert about the National Guard standing down as a result of that questionnaire during that exercise.
That's right.
There are people that are coming around and waking up. You have to understand that people that get into law enforcement 9 times out of 10 do so with good intentions. It's not like they join law enforcement and say, I'm going to go screw with people. That's not their intent. Normally when they do this, they do it out of a sense of, I hope, out of a sense of duty. And to be quite honest with you, if you go on my channel, the Freedomlink Radio on YouTube, you'll find a video of sheriffs. They were having a sort of community meeting, if you will, and they talked about just how important their oath was and how tunnel vision they were into enforcing the state laws and statutes that in the penal code, when they really should have been focused on, do those laws, are they constitutional, and are they in line with keeping with my oath? And that's something that they came to of their own volition. They like, you know what? This is kind of crazy. And it was because of federal government intrusion into their counties and trying to push their will upon these sheriffs. And they're like, oh, hell no. So now they're standing up. You got Sheriff Mack that has his organization trying to wake up sheriffs. And to be quite honest with you, folks, people like sheriffs can actually be a very good tool in the fight against tyranny if you can educate them and make them understand what their oath is all about and what they have to do, what their duty is as a public servant.
That's right. Senior law enforcement official in the county supersedes all others.
Absolutely. So, I mean, no, but does that make him more important than any other person in this chat or listening on the air? No, of course not. We all wield the same amount of power because we all have the same God-given rights, and God gave us all free will so we can choose. We make the choice. Do I consent or don't I? Do I comply or don't I? Do I participate or don't I? You make the choice. Now, it can be painful. Oh, they can be like the mob and break your legs if you don't give them your tribute payment every year. You know, pay your taxes. Oh, yeah, they can break your legs. They can throw you in a hoosegow. They can do that. But you can still be free in your mind and spirit. See, that's what they cannot take that away from you. You could rot away in a jail cell and still be free because you don't have to consent.
Mm-mm.
And that's my point. There's nothing to fear. When you come to grips with what this is all about, and when you boil it all down to it, it's very simple. Good versus evil. Spiritual warfare at its core. If you get to understand spirituality, at least I'm telling you, it's only been in a very short period of time that I've come to understand spirituality, and I will tell you this, that when you come to understand it, you don't fear this stuff. It's not something to fear. It's not something to fear because all of this stuff is just stuff. It's illusion. So understand that we have the power. Why? Because we don't have to recognize illegitimate authority. We don't have to. You simply don't have to do it.
That's right.
You got anything to add there, Mike?
Man, you know, I'm just sitting here. I'm kind of like Flava Flav standing behind you. Flava Flav. You know, I'm just your hype man. No, dude, you're on target.
Are you wearing a clock?
I was going to go get one. All I got is a little rinky-dink watch, so I guess I'll just have to suffice for now. But, no, man, seriously, you know, it's you're spot on in your assessment. I'll tell you one of the things that I've decided to step out and do because I wanted to do something that I thought would have the greatest impact. And one of the things I've elected to do is I'm stepping out in my community and I'm going to visit members of the leadership of local churches. Decided to go and talk to them and remind them that Jesus Christ told you in the Bible that let the man who is without a sword sell his finest robes to buy one. You know, reminding them of Ephesians 6:11, put on the entire armor of God, the whole armor of God. You know, reminding them that if you claim to be a Christian, it's time to step up. You know, you're tasked by your Creator to protect your family, to protect you. We are our brother's keepers. You know, and it's you don't just get to ignore that responsibility. And that outweighs, to me personally, my commitment to my faith outweighs any oath of enlistment. It outweighs, any other worldly thing. You know, it's something that I'm beginning to take very, very seriously. And I'll tell you, I've been meeting up with phenomenally, overwhelmingly positive response. They're asking questions like, what can we do? You know, if you get people that are passive, what can they do? And I said, you know, it's really simple. You can feed the warriors. You can learn medical skills and set up triage centers and be ready to provide medical assistance to the fighters, you know, that kind of stuff. And I said, you know, you don't have to pick up a sword. You can still do God's work, you know, and that thing. And I'm not saying that this is some kind of a religious crusade. Don't misunderstand me. What I'm saying is that I believe that my task in this lifetime, I used to always ask, you know, what's my purpose? Why am I here? What am I supposed to do? How come this is all happening? And I've come to the overwhelming conclusion personally lately that God has put me here with the intention of using all of the skills and everything else I've learned over my entire lifetime to aid those who cannot help themselves. And that's my commitment one way or the other.
That's fantastic, Mike. When we get back, final segment of Freedomlink Radio for this Thursday evening. 2 hours goes by in a flash. But I want to talk about oaths when we get back. You're listening to Freedomlink Radio on the Orion Talk Radio Network. Welcome back, folks. Beat you to it, Mike.
I know, man. I was all stoked. I was ready to go.
That was like super fast diaper change of doom.
I was just firing it up. I was just waiting. I'm watching my watch, 13, 14, 15 seconds.
Oh, man, I gotcha. So anyway, one thing that I wanted to bring up that I'm sure a lot of people may not be aware of, and, one of the things that the Bible talks about is just how it's not necessary to enter into these oaths to do this, okay? It's not necessary for you to do that. The Bible actually talks about that. Because if you're an honorable person, if you're a man of honor and honesty, then you're going to do what you say or do things the right way regardless. And one thing that the Bible makes very clear is if you take an oath, if you make an oath, God's going to hold you accountable for that.
That's right.
Because it's serious. It's serious crap. That's why he says, you don't have to take an oath in the courtroom. You don't have to swear an oath on the Bible. You don't have to do it. So don't do it. Only take an oath when you know beyond the shadow of a doubt that you can stay true to that oath. And God forbid that you don't. And that's all I'm going to say to anybody listening out there that may be in law enforcement or be in the military and not heed or respect the oath that you took.
That's right. That's right, man. And bottom line, you know what, guys, I want you to double hear what Joe just said, because the most important portion of any of that is very simple, that the first thing you swear to preserve, support, uphold, protect, and defend in any oath of office, be it military, be it police officer, be it a court officer, whatever, is the Constitution of the United States of America against all enemies, foreign and domestic. That is your first and primary duty, superseding all others. Now, that being, it is what it is, man. And that's the thing, is that so many people forget about that, is that, there's a lot of people that take that seriously out there. And that should give you comfort. That should bring you comfort in your heart to know that that's still very important at the hearts of most of the people that took those oaths.
Right. I mean, think about it. One of the 10 commandments is thou shalt not bear false witness. You shouldn't lie.
That's right.
God says don't lie. Don't lie. So basically, to keep, if you are, say, a disciple of Christ, and you're doing your best to try and keep the commandments, what the hell do you need to go enter into an oath for? Don't bear false witness. Don't lie. Be true to what you say. Be true to your actions. If that means that, hey, look, I have a duty to defend the Constitution. That's it. Let your word be your bond. And so here we are in a day and age, like I said before, where we're backwards. We're backwards. Everything is backwards. Gosh,
backwards.
Look at where we live. I mean, seriously. And Al was right. Sodom and Gomorrah wasn't a place where it was just hell on earth. Oh, hell no. It was
exactly the opposite.
That's right.
Exactly the opposite.
People were drawn to it. It was paradise, a place to party and let your hair down and everything like that. Exactly. So don't think for a second that people were suffering over. Oh, hell no. They were having the time of their lives. And what's happening over here? I mean, look, it's just rampant filth, if you ask me. And I mean, and I'm not talking about cleanliness or anything like that. I'm just talking about the standards. I'm talking about morality.
Filth, Joe.
Absolutely. And the fact that they've taken God out of schools and out of the courts and out of government and everything else, you can't tell me for a second that this wasn't founded as a Christian nation. I mean, look at our founding documents, for God's sake.
Yep.
And look at the consequences that we are reaping as a result of the loss of morality in this country.
Well, let me take that one step further, if I may, dude. Because there's been a lot of speculation. There's a lot of people out there who have argued and tried to contend with the fact that, oh well, we weren't a Christian nation. We weren't founded as a I weren't founded as well. That's not exactly what's happening. Okay, what happened with our forefathers, and the points of contention that they had was they said organized religion, i.e., the Roman Catholic Church, the Church of England, all of these organized religions that were preaching to the commoners in Latin because the commoners didn't speak Latin, things of that nature. That was the thing they had the problem with, which is first and foremost why the First Amendment to the Bill of Rights guaranteed the freedom of religion, the freedom of that choice. I see we have a caller in.
Yes, we do. We got Jeff from Massachusetts on the line. Jeff, you got about 3 minutes.
Oh, no, I'll be quick. You were talking about Sodom. So very simply put, Boston is Sodom. San Francisco is Gomorrah. And I'll tell you why. This is absolutely fact. I mean, Boston is the first city, Massachusetts is the first state to institute homosexual marriage.
Right.
I mean, Deval Patrick and Governor Mayor Menino are gushing over this.
I thought that was P-Town on the Cape, Jeff.
Oh, no. P-Town's a mini Sodom. Boston is the Sodom. I work in the Back Bay section. I work in the Back Bay section of Boston. Believe me, that is a big homosexual area. I've been saying for a long time, something is going to happen in the Boston area. I mean, because right next to it is a big mosque, one of the biggest in the New England area, and you combine mosque with homosexuality, it's going to create friction, and we're talking of the nuclear kind. And I don't want to see that happen, but I got to be intellectually honest. Boston is truly a Sodom. I mean, and Boston is the capital of the New England area, and people are attracted to Boston because people are able to make a quick buck off of it, and then go back to their home up in New Hampshire. So Boston is definitely Sodom. I thank you for having me on the broadcast, and I'll catch you on Sunday.
You got it, man. We'll talk to you later, Jeff. Thank you for calling. And
thanks, Jeff.
I guess he's kind of right. I mean, you got Sodom, you got Gomorrah, and then right in between, it's just like, And I think I prefaced on the last show of some of the footage. They have live sex festivals on the streets in San Francisco.
But if you were to go out there and have, and if you were to go out there and have a live, Let's Praise Jesus festival, let's go out there and remind people who their holy Lord and Creator is, then that'd be a hate crime. That kind of stuff, man. And that's okay.
And I want to chime in on one more thing, and that's organized religion. I want people to understand just how dangerous organized religion can be, because there are some subtle things that happen with organized religion, subtle messages that they put out that you may not understand where they come from or what they're based on, but it's certainly not on what God intended things to be. 501c3, nonprofit, right?
Status,
all these churches are 501c3. Well, guess what? That comes with a price. You don't just get 501c3 for nothing. No. Oh, no. You got to play patty cake with the federal government in order to keep that 501c3. So that's just one thing of very many things that I could get into. Maybe one day I'll do a show on organized religion. But before we go, and we're almost out of time, I want to bring you guys up to speed on the next couple of shows. Sunday evening, I've got Tisha Cassida running for the 3rd Congressional District of the state of Colorado. She was just recently on with Judge Napolitano on Freedom Watch. And we're going to be talking about all these issues and so much more, because this is the platform that she's running on. And she's doing it as an independent, which is all the more difficult for her to do this. But, I mean, she's doing it out of principle. And that is the people that we really need to get behind. And then on Tuesday, we're going to be talking Constitution with Michael Bednarik. He was a 2004 Libertarian presidential candidate. He'll be on for both hours of the show, and we'll be taking calls for that, as I'm sure a lot of people are going to have questions for him, because that guy can blow your mind when it comes to the way the framers originally intended this country to be. And the other thing that pisses me off, and I'm going to get this real quick, and I think I've said this before, they stopped teaching cursive in public school. And you want to know why? And it's not just because we type on keyboards all the time. What are our founding documents written in?
That's right.
Cursive. And
they don't want you to be able to read it.
If you take cursive out, then they can rewrite it and translate it any way they want in order to appease things. Case in point, the Bible. How many different versions are there? How many people can read Aramaic, or anything like that? Very few.
Ancient Hebrew,
so what
Roman.
happens? Exactly. The ancient Greek and Hebrew, very, very tough. So what do? We rely upon scholars to go ahead and interpret that for us. So all the more reason why you need to go back to the original Greek and Hebrew if you're going to explore the Bible.
Maybe we should use that as our coded transmission from now on. We'll just all write in cursive. That way no one will be able to read it.
That's right. Well, thanks, buddy, and thanks to everybody for coming out tonight. This was a fantastic show. I think we actually broke a record for listeners tonight. So tune in Sunday evening, 7 p.m. Eastern. You're listening to Freedomlink Radio on the Orion Talk Radio Network. Good night, folks. Have a great evening.